Hi, I'm Chris from airwindows, and I have something, as usual, interesting for you today, but this is interesting in perhaps a slightly different way. See over here, we've got Channel 4, and this is the new Channel 5. Here's the deal. Channel 4 sounds like this. The Channel 5 sounds like this. There's a catch. What I'm doing with Channel 5 is incorporating the same denormalization fix and the same noise shaping to the floating point bus I used on Atmosphere. I feel as if I took it up a level, that before I had this stuff going on, it's more than anybody else has, but I had it going on in this particular way where the denormalization thing made an incredibly faint noise that was like sort of air vibrating in a room and then gated itself when it wasn't needed. And also on Channel 4, the noise shaping to the floating point bus was a sort of carrier wave thing going on. And like I've done with some of my IIR filters, like I've done with some of my EQs, it was doing an interleaved thing. I decided with Atmosphere that I was going to try and do something different. Namely, the very first thing which happens, which is denormalization. For Atmosphere, I set it up so that it simply went and added its little noise thing. This noise is like 300 dB down or something. It's extremely faint. But it added it permanently. It was running all the time. And then the thing it's watching for is whether the sound gets to very near zero, which causes the calculations to be made. The new one, if it's done its addition of the incredibly faint noise and the result has caused the result to be too near to zero, it'll subtract it again. So either way, it prevents the problem, but the Atmosphere denormalization thing is permanently causing insanely faint high frequency noise. And I decided that that was going to be good because it would make a sort of infinitesimal air effect. Now this is a lot quieter than normal vendors that stick noise in their plugins, because normal vendors that stick noise in their plugins, it's probably down around 100 dB, maybe 120, maybe 140 or whatever, not 300. But I've done this, and then the output thing, the noise shaping, was, I think, even bigger of an effect. And that, rather than doing the interleaved thing, is keeping all of the error from going to 32-bit or 64-bit for some of the VST and storing it more or less permanently, whereas the interleaved one would dissipate it fairly fast. This time it doesn't dissipate fairly fast. This time it just plain stacks up, and these incredibly tiny mistakes in the encoding just keep piling up until every time a sample buffer goes around, I reduce them all by a very small amount. And what this does is two things. One, it's storing more of the error over a longer period of time, probably enough where it will work and have an effect on bass sounds, whereas the lack of the interleaved quality, I think, is going to make the texture of the sound more natural. There should be more of an ease there because it's this sort of continuous thing rather than a interleaved thing that's interacting with the sampling rate in a peculiar way. Here's the thing. All of this stuff that I'm doing is down around minus 300 dB or so. Granted, cumulative error from the noise shaping will end up adding up to something as it continues to go. But we're still talking about something that I bet you can't hear on YouTube. But that's what Channel has been for over the course of a number of years, because what I've used Channel for is testing out the latest and greatest in my sort of audio tech, and it's using the same algorithm. Oh, well, one small change. As you can see here, it's the same algorithm now, but with the new one by request from a user. If you set output not to 1, it's an attenuator. The fellow wanted to be able to balance out drive boosts and hear it at a level matched thing. So it's like, okay, let's do that. However, I will point out that if you have it at 1, then it's going to bypass itself. So if you have output set to 1, it is literally the same algorithm as Channel 4, because the part that multiplies by the output doesn't even exist unless there's something for it to do. Like with this, there's an if statement that says, like, oh, by the way, if this is 1, ignore all of this and don't even run a calculation. Whereas if it's like this, then it's going to do a calculation and multiply by something. And the result is like this. Channel 4. And Channel 5. Now that at least you can use. I'll turn the output down so that I can talk. I really do not think that anybody is going to be hearing a difference between Channel 4 and Channel 5 on YouTube. So there's not a lot of point going back and forth and going, ooh, check it out how amazing it is. In fact, here, hush, I'm having a conversation with people. I would hesitate to assert that anybody could tell these things apart in a sort of coarsely grained test like a double-blind test, but that's not the only way to experience audio. There's a lot of audiophiles out there and folks who feel that what you need to do is, rather than try to rapidly tell something apart, switching it back and forth, you settle in and get used to a thing. And this has been the case for amplifiers and things like that. Some people will have, say, an amp that has a tiny crossover tiz in it, and otherwise it's amazing, but over the course of listening for weeks or months or whatever, if you start picking that out, it becomes easier and easier to hear. And you go, oh, I'm just tired of this amplifier because I'm starting to get a sense of like the shape of its output and how it behaves and acts. I've gotten used to it, and what I've gotten used to has become apparent. It's that kind of person that I would suggest to try out Channel 4 and Channel 5. You already had Channel 4. Channel 5 is now coming out. The idea is, just maybe, if you leave output at 1, for comparison purposes, because yes, you can reduce the output. If you leave output at 1 so that they're technically identical except for these incredibly subtle details, I think it's possible that, especially if you're not listening terribly quietly and your equipment had better be good. This is not going to work over iPhones, headphones. Nobody ever will be able to distinguish a difference over something like that. But if you have good gear and you're interested in this kind of extreme tone seeking, we've got the one which has one known behavior around the denormalization and around the noise shaping, which has maybe a little bit more energy in it because of the interleaved software routine. And then channel 5 is what I consider the upgrade. Rather than gating its denormalization noise, it constantly has it as at a just about infinitely quiet amount. Like it's not likely to come through even played back over 24-bit stuff. And it also has the difference in the noise shaping, and give it enough time and give it the right content, that might well show up over 24-bit stuff. I don't know whether it would show up over 16-bit stuff. But the idea is that's guaranteed to hang on to more of the especially low frequency detail. And it'll store it up a lot longer than the other kind. And it's also not got the interleaved thing. So there is a type of high frequency energy, a type of way that it's interacting with the frequency rate that will be, I don't know how to describe it other than calmer. There'll be more ease to it. There'll be, the same sense as space, but I'm shooting for more naturalness. And I'm starting to use this new way of doing things with other plugins, especially ones that seem to really call for it. So there's your channel 5. It does have an obvious upgrade in the sense of the output control. Then if you don't use the output control, it has some very, 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 very not obvious upgrades in terms of the tone quality, which I think should feel more natural, more convincing, and have more ease and sort of analog-y qualities rather than stuff that interacts with the actual PCM sampling technology itself. I don't recommend anybody try to double-blind test this because this is just gilding the lily. It's being very fancy. But if you do extended listening through something like Channel 4 or Channel 5, I would recommend giving it a shot. You're not likely to hear the denormalization noise because that's just plain too quiet. But you might pick up on the noise shaping, because it's my theory that this word length related stuff, the stuff where it's like, is it 16, is it 24, what is it? I think that adds up in a big way. I think that's part of what eats up digital sound and makes it so fragile that you have to really do very little processing if you want to hang on to what feels like an open natural capture. And the new technology I've got that is being included in new plugins, I think, is a step beyond anything anybody else has had, and it's certainly a step beyond what I had before. Give it a try. What have you got to lose? It's free. Well, it's supported by Patreon. That's how I keep doing this kind of work. But you can try the plugin for free, and nothing is inside it to make it take itself away from you. So, again, give it a shot. Let me know what you think. Thanks.